From Resilient Partners, this is the Resilient Insights Podcast. Every episode offers in-depth insights on the key debates and conversations shaping Washington and the world. From policy to leadership to the lighter side of life, we're your source for thoughtful discussions. So get ready to be informed, inspired, and engaged. On today's episode, I'm joined by Nevada political operative Zac Moyle. Zac is here to discuss the Battleground State of Nevada and the pivotal role it will play in the 2024 election. Zac, welcome to the Resilience Insights Podcast.
Glad to be here.
Thanks for being on, Zac. Why don't we start off here? What's the state of play on the ground regarding the presidential race and the Senate race? You look at the polling averages from 538, looks like Vice President Harris is up 1 point and Senator Rosen is up 8 to 9 points. What's the mood on the ground in Nevada?
Nevada's in play every year, and that's what we're seeing. Lots of things going on here. The difference is, you just mentioned, the vast difference between the Senate and the presidential side. It's been a while since we've seen a gap this large, and that gap kind of exists as well in some of our congressional races. Most competitive presidential race in some time, least competitive some of the other races, somewhat ironic.
Why do you think that big gap exists today?
I think a lot of these races have probably won or lost in the primary. I think Republicans either had the wrong candidate to begin with or the wrong candidate won. I think that's really where you ended up with in some of these races. So that's part of it. The other part is just the fact that Trump has really historically never done well at carrying the ticket all the way down, whether it's Nevada, whether it's Georgia. You combine that with the fact that really look at any poll, you'll see that we have a record number of split ticket voters. You know, the average voter is a split ticket voter where the average voter used to be a straight ticket voter. They like to hedge their bets. So people voting for Trump at the top of the ticket don't always make their way down the rest of the ticket.
A little bit of hedging the bets with Nevada, so it sounds appropriate.
Yeah.
Give me a little bit of more insight here. How are candidates positioning themselves on the ground? I know that there was a lot of discussion early on, no tax on tips and other important issues, but what's dominating the conversation on the ground regarding the actual issues defining the debate for the presidential race?
You know, the issues are going to be similar where they are. I mean, Nevada, bellwether state, you know, you want to know what the economy's doing, come to Nevada. We're based on tourism. You know, people here are not just in Nevada, but coming through Nevada. If you're on the ground, you get to talk to people, not just in Nevada, but people visiting. You really get a good feel for kind of how the country's going. So the economy is always going to dominate. You know, when the economy's going well, Nevada's well. When it's not, Nevada's not so much because we're so heavily tourism based. In recent years, Nevada's diversified a lot. You know, we're more into manufacturing. We've drawn the Amazons of the world, you know, whether it's Fanatics, other things like that out. So it's definitely different. And then you have mining, which is very consistent as well. So Nevada, very much a lot of blue collar states, people that live and thrive off some of these other industries. So when the economy's well, Nevada's well. When it's not, it's not. And it's a great bellwether for these other things. When you look around that, outside of those issues, the same issues that are going to dominate on a national scale are going to come into play in Nevada. The difference here is going to be really kind of those blue collar working folks, whether it's the culinary union, teachers union, some of those other major demographics that are in play each and every year. Those are demographics that Democrats absolutely have to win if they're going to win Nevada. We had a Democratic governor's candidate that did not have the backing of the teachers union. That was major in a race that was, you know, effectively won by less than 20,000 votes. So some of those demographics have a lot to do with the organizations themselves, Democrat buy-in. Nevada was certainly a state that was almost affected by some of that Democratic split from 16, became a problem here in 22. So Democratic unity is big as well. And then the third part of that's going to be people moving into Nevada. You have Henderson's one of the largest growing cities in the country. A lot of that is from California and other states. The reality here in Nevada is voter registration is the closest it's been in a long, long time. Republicans have been picking up votes every month since we put motor voter registration into play. That's really shifted the demographic in terms of what independents are going to do. But the more people we see moving into Nevada from other states, the more Republican it's become. We really have the closest voter registration numbers we've had in a long, long time. So very different demographics, somewhat of a different electorate than it was, you know, maybe 8 to 10 years ago.
You talk a little bit about demographics there and a little bit about unions. One of the national headlines was the lack of an endorsement by the AFL-CIO for either candidate. How are unions playing on the ground? Have they consolidated their support around one candidate? Are they neutral? Are they, you know, the union operation in Nevada, usually a big turnout machine. So how are they positioned in this race?
The union is one of the biggest ones that benefits from the shift from Biden to Harris. The Biden to Harris energetic aspect really manifests itself in some of the unions that you mentioned, and their buy-in in particular. Frustration with Biden's failure to deliver on some of the promises that he gave, frustration from a lot of his weaknesses. So that shift from Biden to Harris really resonates with some of those communities that you're mentioning. I will say that union is something that Republicans have been better with recently, whether it is the AFL-CIO, which you mentioned, whether it's some of the labor unions on the ground, contractors, builders, labor. These are a lot of groups that Republicans have continually made inroads with. The local labor union here, 872, they go with Republicans, they go Democrats back and forth. That being said, the two largest unions are always going to be effectively, in terms of their impact and how they shape Nevada politics, are going to be the culinary union and the teachers union. Those are two dominant factors. They have proven turnout operations they utilize regularly. They're historically major impacts just in their endorsements and their ability to anoint and shift candidates. So it comes back to those are two major groups here, particularly in Clark County, that really shape how well a candidate's going to perform.
Have the culinary union or the teachers union made an endorsement in the race?
They're a lot more behind Harris now. They never really go against. It's how hard they push. The push under Harris is very different, and you can start to see that buy-in really coming through and the difference it's going to make. And they're going to be very influential in a state that's going to be very, very close. Those are the groups in Nevada that make the difference.
Former President Trump has made a big play on the issue of immigration. How's that playing out on the ground in Nevada?
Immigration is an issue here. I think that is a turnout issue by and large. That's partly a base issue from the aspect of really it's something that motivates the base. And then there's the aspect of the swing. Nevada has a heavy Hispanic population. So immigration is a definitive factor here, maybe not to the level it is in Arizona next door or some of the surrounding states, but it's one that people want an answer for. We're looking for proposals that come along with that and how that policy is going to really shape what the candidates want to do. But it's no more of a motivating factor than a lot of other states right now. And it's one that kind of resonates and hits in particular.
I saw a national poll showed Vice President Harris winning the Hispanic vote roughly 57 to 35. When you broke down demographics in that poll, Hispanic men were going very strong for President Trump by a similar margin here. How is the Hispanic vote playing out in the state of Nevada right now?
The Hispanic vote is very different than it used to be. The Hispanic vote was largely concentrated in certain geographical areas of Nevada where we're starting to see that expand. If you take Las Vegas, the Hispanic vote in East Las Vegas, North Las Vegas, different pockets of town, very different from the Hispanic vote in a Summerlin or some of these other areas. And so I think one of the things that we overlook often today is we try and take these demographics and we try and lump them by race, but I think what we're seeing is it's a lot more by geography than it used to be. People that think alike live together by and large, and so I think we take that vote as a whole, we kind of miss some of the other factors that play out there. One of the biggest ones is age. If you look at whether it's Nevada or any of the other states, you'll see that if we break the Hispanic vote down by really over 45 and under 45, you're going to see that Hispanic vote under the age of 45 is actually trending Republican and has been for some time. A lot of that is the younger Hispanic vote. They're very far removed from what their forefathers have experienced. It's a different demographic. The issues are largely different to them. Having not experienced some of those things that maybe their parents and their forefathers have, their views on things are very different. So a younger Hispanic voter, a lot of these demographics are oftentimes more likely to vote on different issues, whether it's the economy, inflation, kitchen table issues that affect a lot of other folks. We've been seeing it trend that way for a while. I think it's by age. Likewise, when we look at some of these other demographics, you see the same thing by age. Hispanic has always been a very important vote here in Nevada. It's always been influential. It's really made or broke a lot of candidates, even Republicans, over the years. But as we see these trends with really that age demographic and it trending more Republican, we see that as something that the Democrats really do need to shore up, and it's a message that they need to get into and expand more than they've used in terms of being a turnout vehicle.
How have recent elections for governor or other congressional races or even in the state legislature, how have those past elections positioned Nevada as a battleground state going forward?
Nevada's always been a battleground state. We were red, we were kind of purple, and now we're trending reddish purple again. If it's 22, we had one of the most unpopular governors in America. You had the only gubernatorial seat that was flipped. That was largely due to handling of COVID and how the Democratic governor was. But we also just mentioned how, it was won by a very small number of votes in a race where the teachers union decided not to wade into that. If we look at 22 by the Senate race, one of the most interesting things is we won the governor's race, we lose the Senate race in terms of Republicans. That's relevant because the Democrat senator had large traditional law enforcement group support that Republicans would get. So we really have seen Nevada, these candidates in particular, playing very down the middle for some time, especially with Democrats. If you look at Democrats' national messaging, it's the same thing in Nevada. They're not running to the left by any means. They're running more and more to the middle. And I would say that they're often winning and they're running on Republican issues themselves. We see them talking about tax cuts, tax breaks. You see what the Harris plan attacking Trump on what he's going to do. Here in Nevada, whether it's Susie Lee or whether it's Jackie Rosen, both of them are touting bipartisan bills that they've supported. You have Susie Lee running ads saying, here's my bill that was endorsed by Republican Governor Joe Lombardo. I mean, these are people that are not running, effectively even as Democrats, certainly not liberal Democrats, but very much to the middle. That speaks to what Nevada is more down the middle. It's not necessarily a very liberal or conservative state. If we really take Nevada down by the issues itself, and this is why the economy is always so large, it's a down the middle state. It always has been, even when it was red or even when it's gone blue. That's why we talk about Nevada being a bellwether state, kind of being a barometer for some of the other places in the nation, because it does consistently go back and forth.
What about the ground game? Who has a stronger ground game? Who's working on the ground right now to turn out the vote? And what are those operations looking like?
Democrats here have always traditionally had a better ground game. Ever since Harry Reid, he made it a very important tenet to have a ground game and to kind of get their ducks in order. So it's been like that for years. It's changed somewhat since Reid passed. If you come into Nevada and play in politics, you'll hear about the Reid machine. That's still evident today. Democrats have always had a better turnout operation, but Republicans are still picking up the pace. You can't go anywhere and not see some kind of activity on the ground. I will say what's different about this year for Republicans is since Nevada became a all-mail balloting state, Republicans have continually fought that. They pushed back against all of the things that are wrong with mail balloting. This is the first cycle where we're seeing Republicans going, we're going to play the game instead of complain about the game. And everything that you'll see from Trump is make a plan to vote. You'll hear this consistently, make a plan to vote. It's on all of their literature. You'll see that in their ground operations. And make a plan to vote means that they're encouraging Republicans to vote early or vote absentee. They're trying to get those ballots in. They're trying to make sure those voters are in play. We see a very traditional, consistent Democratic ground game. We do see a considerable shift in the Republican ground game itself. We've heard from national donors who say, I don't see enough of that. But what they're not seeing is the traditional ground game where we're out there knocking on doors versus kind of a ballot harvesting operation that's focused on let's get these ballots in. And I think that's probably going to be the most understated strategic point from this campaign cycle is that Trump shift to kind of play that game where they haven't in the past, where they've complained about it and been frustrated by it. Here where they're saying, fine, let's just play that game. Let's have a ballot harvesting operation. And what's different again is you see less from the Trump campaign, more from their allies. These third-party groups have really come into Nevada and made that a full-on effort. So whether it's the Trump campaign, any one of their major allies that are out there, it's considerable this year versus previous cycles.
Pretty amazing that after all these years, the Harry Reid machine is still a factor.
But I will say Republicans have built under Joe Lombardo a very successful operation. Having a Republican governor in the state who is not just a Republican governor, but invested to the level that Lombardo is, building out that operation and also understanding he doesn't want to be a lame duck governor in 2 years has really motivated Republicans. So I do think that we are seeing a shift in the ground game itself in terms of operations and a real opportunity for Republicans that we haven't seen previously. And that kind of coincides with the Reid passing and then the Lombardo anointing. So between those two things, again, a tremendous opportunity for Republicans here in Nevada, and so far it's been very successful.
It's election night, Zac, and voters across the country are tuning in. People are tuning in to see what's happening in Nevada. What's the path to victory for both candidates on that night, and what should listeners and viewers be looking for as votes come in that night?
I think as a political operative for 2+ decades, it's getting harder to influence elections on the ground. We are more tied to national messaging and what the candidates are doing from a national perspective than we ever have before. From a ground game perspective in Nevada, it's very simplistic. It's the ballot harvesting operation like we talked about. The last 3 cycles since mail balloting has been an issue, you see the same thing. Republicans on election night are very close, and then as more and more mail ballots come in, it gets further away, it gets out of hand. So again, that mail balloting operation I just mentioned is what you're looking at. What will that number be on election night? As we know, these things are never decided on election night, very different from previous years. So how close will it be? because it's likely that however close it is on election night or even leading up till election night, it's only going to go in Democrat favor from there. This is something we've seen not just on a presidential level, but in local assembly races. We had a county commission race that decided by 19 votes
Wow.
that flipped 3 times. If you're talking about election night itself, Republicans have to be ahead when those first ballots come out. If they're not, it's likely it's going to move in Democratic favor. So it's simpler in Nevada than other states as far as what you're looking at election night and what you're looking at for the number itself. I think it has a larger impact on the election in other states on a national scale as we see mail balloting become more of a thing, how balloting has expanded and changed. Nevada is a great barometer for how well did that operation work here in Nevada? Was it successful? Were they able to turn out the vote? Were they able to take advantage of this new voter registration surge from Republicans themselves? These are key things that as an operative you look at and you figure out how to adapt.
Let's pivot a little bit down to the down ballot races. We talked upon the race with Senator Jackie Rosen and Sam Brown. That race is not as tight as maybe many anticipated. Why do you think that's the case?
This is a race that really never got off the ground. I think that you just, in some of these races, whether it was CD3 where you definitively had the wrong candidate win for Republicans, or if it's the Senate race itself, where I don't think they ever really had the perfect candidate for that race. That's all we're really seeing. You were always going to have an uphill battle. Rosen is formidable. She's perceived as more moderate. She has support from a lot of traditional, more Republican leaning groups. So again, that was a race that you had to have the perfect candidate. You had to have the perfect roadmap. You had to kind of have the perfect playbook. So there's a lot of things that you could kind of point to the Sam Brown campaign, wish they had done better, maybe the senatorial committee itself. But the reality is, I don't know that Republicans ever had the perfect candidate to win that race. And I think even if they did, it was always an uphill battle. The Sam Brown campaign never really got off the ground. They didn't have the resources to compete. They were bogged down by a primary where it was the Trump competition and he got dragged as far to the right as you can, which is always a problem in Nevada politics. Meanwhile, Rosen's run more and more to the middle. Rosen just hasn't given voters a lot of reasons to look at another candidate. There was a poll out 2 weeks ago that shows that over a quarter of independent voters still don't know who Sam Brown is. That's indicative of the resource battle and kind of just how that campaign has gone. It just has not gotten the same amount of attention that other races get. I don't know that that's Republicans' fault. I don't know that that's Sam Brown's fault. I just don't know that they had the perfect candidate in that race in what was always going to be an uphill battle. And so I think that in that race, the focus has rightly shifted towards Trump and what a Trump win in Nevada could be versus what it could do for the Senate.
Does a Trump win in Nevada carry Sam Brown, or is that a stretch?
No, I don't think so. I don't think Trump voters have ever carried down the ballot races. When we look at these, again, it's those two things we talked about. The first one is the fact that voters like to hedge their bets. You're going to have people that vote one way at the top of the ticket, they vote down the ticket. And the second one is we've seen this consistently. Trump voters don't necessarily go down the ticket. There's not a lot of races that he has carried. Trump has largely, been a lightning rod as we've seen, and that carries it all the way down the ticket time and time again. I don't think you carry Republicans up or down the board. We live in a day and age, especially where it's so polarized at the top. It's more polarized than ever. You're going to have voters that they go to the polls, they hold their nose, and then they hedge their bets down the ticket. I think that's another thing that we're just seeing in this changing, shifting electorate that's very different than it has been in years before.
The U.S. House of Representatives is as closely divided as you could imagine. How about those down ballot races for Congress? How are those playing out?
Ever since we redistricted here in Nevada, it's been, again, an uphill battle for Republicans in 3 of those 4 districts. The reality is those districts are somewhat out of bounds. And the third one, you have to have really the perfect candidate. I mean, the real air, again, for Republicans here in Nevada is we have in what would be those 3 races, we have 3 males. We don't have kind of someone that resonates differently or looks different. This is a problem that Republicans have historically had when it comes to good female candidates and trying to find them and run them. We've simply struggled with that. April Becker came close in Congressional District 3 last cycle, probably biggest swing voting demographic, not just outside of females themselves, which it tends to be, but also female Republicans. Female Republicans make or break elections. I'm a pollster by trade. This is something I see on a regular basis. Republican women tell us time and time again, I don't have to vote for the other person, but I want someone that I'm going to vote for. I mean, oftentimes we focus on independent third-party swing voters. Republican women are influential voters that are out there. Republican women, men decide early, women decide late, and particularly Republican women. They understand this concept. I don't have to vote for the other candidate, but I also don't have to vote for my candidate unless I get some of the things they want. So I look at these 3 races, the 3 competitive races, and I look at all 3 and I say, I just think it's an opportunity lost by Republicans to find the perfect candidate to run. Republicans have to find a solution to that, have to find an answer to that.
Zac, tell us, you said you were just a pollster by trade. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do for a living, how you got involved in politics.
Yeah, I've been in politics for 20 plus years. I was in retail management. I volunteered a lot, and they said, "Would you take a job that requires a lot of hours for very little pay?" And I did, for whatever reason. So that was 24 years ago. Been doing it ever since. I work in 19 states, worked on 3 presidential campaigns, and live here in Nevada with my family, which I love. I love Nevada because it's a great state to live in, the bellwether for everything else. I work in 19 states, 3 presidential campaigns. Really blessed to be in this business. I've seen a lot over the years. Pollster is something that we got into about a decade ago. My partner and I did something that we paid a lot of money to do, and I'm a mathematician, love it, and we started doing it, and it's probably the single biggest thing we do now. I want to know what voters think. I don't want to know what I think. I don't want to know what my partner thinks. I want to know what voters think. The biggest failure that we have on it from a political standpoint is politicians' failure to ask the voters what they actually think. The worst words in America are when a politician gets up there and said, "Let me tell you what Americans think." Every time they say that, I can almost guarantee they don't know. You've worked in politics. We've worked together on campaigns in the past. You know exactly how it is. It can become an echo chamber, and that's problematic. So the question we ask politicians is, who are you listening to? Is it an echo chamber, or are you going straight to the voters? I love being a pollster because I can ask voters what they think, and I deliver that to candidates. It's up to the candidate on whether or not they want to receive that. And some candidates are better than others at receiving that information.
Every time we have a guest on the Resilient Insights podcast, we curate a playlist for our listeners. There's 20 some odd days before Election Day. Give me a song that describes the current mood that you're in right now.
Oh, man. Well, Malcolmus just came out with a new project, the Hard Quartet. So
Okay.
I don't know that it's a song, but this idea of the Hard Quartet released this week, we got 30 days to go. It's hard. We're digging in. If you know Malcolm, this is definitely the best project. I love this new project that they have. The Hard Quartet is great, and the band name is perfect. I work for John Kasich, who's a huge music guy. John Kasich loved every kind of music. He used to say, "I love me some Rihanna." That's John Kasich for you, like every kind of music. So that's a great John Kasich question, and we should call him and get him on this podcast and ask him that very question.
That's a great idea. Well, Zac, I appreciate your time today. Where can people find you and learn more about your company?
I have a website, thepollingprofessor.com. If you ever want to see anything, you can go to I started the Polling Professor so people can ask questions. I don't update it as regularly, but if you have a question about politics, you can go there and you can submit a question. I might answer it live. I might just reply to you there. That's where I encourage people to go. It's a website I started because I can't go anywhere. Whenever someone says, "What do you do for a living?" It's a difficult, you get the same thing, buddy. Like, what do you tell people? When you do, they have a lot of questions. And I find people just have a lot of generic questions, and I try and give them the most straightforward answer I can. So if you have a question about politics or you want to see anything I've written, you can go to pollingprofessor.com. If you're trying to find my consulting websites, you can work off of that. But the best place just for generic information, leave a question, ask a question, anything like that.
Appreciate it. Zac, thanks for being a guest on the Resilient Insights podcast. Be sure to give us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast. If you're on YouTube, you can watch this there as well. Until next time, keep listening. Thanks, Zac.
And I just can't see